Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan, and welcome back to another fun-filled, action-packed episode of Iowa's favorite conservative podcast. We are here back in Studio 130 with everyone's favorite John Hendrickson and also with Chris Ingstad. He loves that intro. This is going to serve as our back-to-school special, even though we will have very little to say about anything regarding going back to school. Even though I'm ready, right? And
are you going to open house tonight too, or meet the teacher night?
I don't know. Okay, this is my last year with an elementary school student,
right?
So this is significant. They're getting older. No, because this is as unprepared as usual. I wanted to have some stuff on the soundboard loaded with Back to School, the movie quotes, with Rodney Dangerfield, and
good one.
It is, and the Sam Kinison bit, the late great prophet Sam Kinison, which really I think, frankly, we can tie a lot of what is trouble with our country back to the loss of Sam Kinison. That's when it all started to fall apart. But I digress.
I think it was the OJ trial, but
okay, I'll buy that one too.
Same era.
Yeah, we lost all the greats, John. John hasn't been the same since we lost Hoover.
That's right. Yeah, I was just going to say that would be mine, 1932.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was thinking about back to school, though, a little bit, gentlemen, with some of what we've been talking about, is I guess maybe in my mind, and I others have said it as well, that back to school time, Labor Day, is really when political campaigns really kick into gear. People start paying attention to this stuff again. And so I think it is a meaningful pivot point in politics. And so today we're going to check in on that. And we specifically, the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll is out. And so we can go over that and the upcoming presidential debate. And so we've got a lot to talk about. Johnny, ready?
I am, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes, great. No one provided us with a location of Swedish meatballs, so John never made it to the fair.
No,
which is probably good because he's sick of me talking about it, and we can move on. Okay, so I want to set the stage a little bit for the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll, and we want to be fair about this. Is that historically the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll done by Ann Seltzer is a very reliable poll. And I think that's fair. No one gets it right every time.
Over the course of history,
absolutely,
sure,
yeah. Independent ratings give it a good review. However, as we have failed to pass up an opportunity to point out, it was the ITR Foundation poll that nailed the last election, whereas the Des Moines Register's poll was all over the place. Most notably, completely missing the Attorney General's race, having it as something like a 25-point race or something 3 weeks out, and then in their very last poll magically showed it as a dead heat, which really strains credibility in my mind. But I just a reminder that the ITR Foundation poll did called it consistently in the last election, and hopefully we'll get back around to getting some new data on the foundation poll very soon. Again, coming back to the idea that we'll get past this back to school and Labor Day.
Well, and just a little icing on the cake from that last poll as a reminder, they had the Grassley-Franken race in play for a while, and our polling never showed that, and the election itself didn't show that.
That's right. Nor, I mean, those of us that have been paid attention for a while knew that was never a race too. So
also
anyway, well, let's get to this because the Des Moines Register and Seltzer tested the Iowa caucus electorate. And so I'm going to kind of bounce some of these top line numbers, specifically off of you, John, because I want your take. And then we'll kind of circle back around to what we think about these numbers or do we trust them or not. So the top line number, which is I guess at the end of the day, the most relevant one is who are you going to vote for? And so this was testing what they perceived as likely caucus goers, and I've got something to say about that later. But Donald Trump 42, Ron DeSantis 19. That's about double the support, plus 23. Followed up by Tim Scott in third place at 9. And then you have Nikki Haley, then Mike Pence, then Chris Christie, and then Vivek Ramaswamy. And then a smattering of support the way. So does that seem like the right result to you, John?
I think so, and I just want to preface that by saying I still think this whole thing is very fluid. Mm-hmm. So I think it's too early to predict who may win the Iowa caucuses or even the nomination. I mean, I have a theory on who's going to do that, but I think what surprised me in the poll was Chris Christie with that. But I wasn't surprised to see
which part about Chris Christie in the poll.
Well, I think he came in above Vivek, and I can't remember his number because I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Chris Christie at 5 and Vivek at 4.
Yeah, and Christie has basically has not even come to Iowa. And,
I think he specifically said he's not playing in Iowa.
He's putting all of his eggs in the New Hampshire basket, and I'm not surprised to see the former president, Donald Trump, running ahead because he's been ahead in most of the polls, not just here in Iowa, but nationally as well as in some other state polls as well. But like I said, I still think this is very, very fluid. So it's too early to say that this is going to be a predictor.
Chris?
I don't know how to peg the percentages.
Yeah.
But I think that order generally feels about right, with the exception of Vivek. I would have pegged higher. Either on par with Tim Scott or right behind Tim Scott and ahead of Haley. And that is purely on sense and feel and kind of one-off anecdotal conversations.
And I don't know if this poll reflects the ton of money that the super PACs of DeSantis, Tim Scott, and Nikki Haley have been pouring into Iowa, because every other ad, at least on, and I don't know if you watch this, Chris, but I watch KCCI News.
I've seen it
at 5 and 6. But,
I'd hit the soundboard here, but I can't remember which one is which.
Every other ad is either DeSantis, Tim Scott, or Nikki Haley. So they're dumping millions of dollars in ads where Vivek doesn't have those resources.
I do think there's not. It's hard to, without a baseline, it's hard to say whether the ads are working. I will say that it appears that, at least on a name ID standpoint, that some of that money is starting to register. They did an interesting way, measuring your first or second choice in this race. And if you combine those numbers, 63% of respondents had their first or second choice as President Trump. 61% of voters said it was Ron DeSantis. So if you have a first or second, that actually becomes a lot closer. And then those, like you said, John, that are spending a lot of money, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, they're at 53 for Scott. And Nikki Haley, I don't think, spent quite as much. So Tim Scott is registering up there in that first or second choice category as well. Of note, the Register tested this before the indictments against President Trump. At that point,
was it before or during?
Well, or during, I guess. They said before in the article, so I don't know the exact time. Maybe they were in the field before, but anyway, before at least the lion's share of the recent drama, and they had Trump at 38, DeSantis at 20, which is plus 18. So it's gotten a little better for President Trump, but not a lot. I think you have seen some people rallying to President Trump's defense, so that's in there as well. So here's what I want to come around to, though, a little bit on this, is this idea of what is the electorate here? What is the universe of people that are going to show up at a Republican caucus? So this isn't a primary. This isn't roll into your local voting place, show them your ID, get the ballot, fill in the circle, and leave. You got to go out on a cold winter night and go to a party building exercise in a school cafeteria or something like that, register to vote as a Republican, participate in everything, listen to the speeches, then cast a vote. And we've all done this, but it's not a 5 minute in and out sort of a thing.
And it's a fixed time.
Yeah, it is. It's got to
not
be
polls are open.
right.
Yeah.
And so what the Register did, and I don't know how else to do it, so I'm not necessarily being critical of this, but they just started dialing numbers of every Iowan they could find. They didn't go to a voter list. They didn't. They just started dialing numbers, and the first 400 and some people, which is a good sample size, that said they were either definitely going to go to the caucuses or probably going to go to the caucuses. That was their universe, and so I think there was one gentleman they quoted in here, Brian Ahlstrom, a 48-year-old independent voter and poll respondent, said he would consider caucusing in January if it looks like some of the candidates opposing Trump have a chance. Okay, that doesn't sound to me like somebody that's going to caucus.
I had the same take, but
and so I guess what I'm saying is it felt like that screen to let through who's going to show up. We've all been to multiple caucuses. Was probably a lot wider than it should have been. And I think that's where you end up with Chris Christie at 5%, probably based on name ID alone, probably based on the fact that he was here 8 years ago, and not based on actually talking to those base Republicans who show up and vote. Because I have yet to talk to a single Chris Christie voter out there in the wild. Okay?
Yep.
Have either of you guys run across a Chris Christie voter in the caucuses?
Oh,
but I've talked to all kinds of people that maybe Vivek's not their first choice yet, but they really like him.
You know, that's a good point. And Chris, you've been with me on a few of these conversations where we've been on literally opposite sides of the state, and Vivek had recently been there, and these are smaller communities, and the people come away with a really positive impression. Now, I don't know if those people are going to vote for him. I don't know if they liked his policies or just his presentation, but he leaves a very favorable impression. And I would say the folks who go to those type events are probably more definitely caucus goers.
Yes.
And so again, he's probably underrepresented, underreported.
Yep. I think where you get some of those probably or maybe folks coming out to a caucus is where it is a different kind of candidate that's new on the scene with a different set of ideas that mobilizes a part of the electorate that had not been motivated before.
Do you have any past history in mind, Chris?
Well, I'll give you two of them. In 2016, it was Donald Trump. Donald Trump got people new to the that had not maybe hadn't even been former Democrats, but they're like, you know what, that guy. That's what I've been waiting for. Somebody to fight for me. And even one of these poll respondents talked about he is only going to support Trump, and it's because of his America First approach to foreign policy and grow economy and jobs. So, yes. But the other one I would say, we talked about this in the last episode, was Ron Paul. Ron Paul generated a bunch of new people that I'm not sure they're still, some of them have stayed with the Republican Party, others have fallen off, but that was a new idea. Other than that, I think the electorate is set. It's base Republicans, the same ones that were voting 8 years ago. So I would caution reading too much into the Chris Christie number. I feel like the order, at least on the top three, is correct. Trump, DeSantis, Tim Scott. I believe, just based on gut feel, that Vivek Ramaswamy's right in there just below those top three. That's just my guess. But
the DeSantis strong showing second place, but very close to Trump if you kind of stick first and second choice together.
Yeah.
Reminds a little bit of the formula that Rick Santorum had.
Yes.
And he came out as the winner.
Yep.
Right. And it is. Look, it is completely plausible to think of former President Trump maintaining his lead or even growing it. It is also conceivable that lawsuits, allegation, anything else pops out, he could really lose some support and might DeSantis really elevate at that point. So to your point, John, it's fluid and we've got 5 months left, so we'll see.
This race will change. The numbers, the order, who's up, who's down. President Trump is strong right now. He's going to have some bad weeks or months in this race. And others are going to be strong. They're going to be weak. It's just expect it to change because it always does.
It might change next week, but before we get
to
our next...
we're there.
We're there.
But okay.
Did you guys see who won the poll, though? John, did you see who won?
I guess I don't understand your.
Okay, fill us in.
Wait,
Yeah.
not sure I could ask a simpler question than who won. It was Governor Kim Reynolds.
Oh,
80
I got to get to this.
81% approval rating.
But no, okay, I agree. And again, as we have, she is the most popular political figure in Iowa, especially so in Republican politics. Okay, but I want to imagine, and here's my one more criticism of this poll. You're sitting at your precinct caucus. Let's say there's 100 or 200 people in the room, packed into that crowded school lunchroom in January, or is it? Or not February, for whatever it is. Okay, you look around and you see your neighbors from around your community, 100 base Republicans. Right. You're going to tell me that 18 of those 100 people disapprove of the job that Kim Reynolds is doing as governor?
Well, that's probably your margin. That's
absurd,
yeah.
And that's why the poll is broken, because that number is no bigger than 2 or 3.
Well, nonetheless, flaws and all in the system.
Yeah.
Governor Reynolds wins the poll.
It is, yes, absolutely. So, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the other part that I needed to do. So, we have a Republican debate though coming up this week, right, John?
That's right, Wednesday.
It's not the only thing we have coming up this week, though.
Well, back to school. No, what?
Well, again, like the one person who's not going to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have one candidate that's not going to be there, John.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is President Trump. What's President Trump going to be doing instead?
He is going to be doing an interview with Tucker Carlson.
So okay. So
there he goes, John.
What's on your TV?
It'll probably be Tucker.
Yeah.
But you know, let me just talk about that a minute, because I think all the candidates should sit down with Tucker. Like he did last week. He did an interview with Vivek, and just one of the best hours I've seen. I mean, just Vivek did an excellent job answering questions, especially on foreign policy.
Did he do better or worse than Andrew Tate?
I confess I didn't watch that one.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, Tucker is asking questions that you won't see from probably Brett Baier or Martha McCall.
Correct.
From Fox News.
Correct.
And so I think candidates should debate. I think one thing with Donald Trump is it's kind of funny watching the establishment have a meltdown over this. We saw this in Iowa, where they said, well, Trump's not playing by the state fair rules. You know, he can't, how dare he come to the fair and have hundreds of people, thousands of people flock to him, and he's taking attention away from DeSantis and Pence and all these other candidates. You know, how dare he does that? He doesn't play by the rules. Well, why are people surprised by that? Donald Trump is probably the most unconventional politician in our lifetime. And, you know, he's never been a role player in that sense. And so I think skipping the debate he's going to be the center of attention no matter what he does. And the other thing is I'm not sure if that Fox News debate is actually going to be the best place for him, because I don't know if a lot of those debates, first of all, they're not debates. They tend to be gotcha questions where the candidates scramble to get, one-liners that are then repeated. And I think I think Trump is better served with Tucker. I really do.
I got a hot take for you, John. Donald Trump should absolutely not do that debate. He's absolutely made the right decision, and he should feel no obligation to go do it. That's what I believe. He has won the last 2 Republican nominations for president. Why would he want to go in and let Doug Burgum and Asa Hutchinson, who's probably now going to throw bombs at him?
Yes.
Absolutely, he shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And you know what? I have no problem with him finding some other venue to get to speak.
Yeah, but John, how happy are you that he's chosen Tucker?
I'm very happy.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wouldn't do it either. And if I was advising President Trump, I would advise him not to do this debate. He can get anyone to listen to his message anytime he wants, in any forum he wants. And further, President Trump can come to the state fair and do whatever he wants and leave under his own terms. I'm glad
Absolutely.
he came. I'm glad that he came to Iowa. I think it's awesome that he bought 10,000 pork chops for Iowans. I know that we have staff members here that took advantage of that.
But there were people.
John didn't, because John didn't go.
No, I didn't go.
But if he wants to come in and create a scene and fly his airplane around the state fairgrounds and land and come and leave an hour later, you know what? That's his prerogative.
But there were
rules.
There were people complaining that he's not playing by the traditional rules of the state fair, whatever those rules may be.
Look,
I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen him do one of Governor Reynolds' Fairside chats. I would love to have seen him walk down the concourse and shake hands all day long. That'd have been cool to watch. But you know what? He didn't have to play by my rules.
Yeah.
If he feels like it's his show, what kind of is? He has won the last two Republican nominations. He was a sitting president. We don't have to like it or not, but that's the reality.
So I skipped today's pre-production meeting, guys, so you may have covered this already. But my question is, does this kind of open the, can President Biden say, let's assume Trump's the nominee.
Right.
If he's not, then this question may be moot. But if Trump is the Republican nominee, can President Biden then be like, I'm not going to debate. No, he didn't do what I'm going to do.
Okay, maybe. But let's look at the difference between these two decisions. Donald Trump is saying, I'm not going to do the debate. Is anybody really wondering what's on Donald Trump's mind? I mean, he's going to tell you in real time on Truth Social or maybe on Twitter back against. We all know what President Trump thinks. Joe Biden's going to spend the next how many months until the next 14, 16 months in his basement. And we'll have no clue what Joe Biden thinks about anything. And so, yes, I suspect that he'll use this as some sort of precedent. But I think there's a canyon of difference between what this means from these two political figures.
Right, but that wasn't my question.
I understand that, but
The question was
I would imagine that regardless of who the nominee would be on the Republican side, that President Biden will try to figure out some way to get out of the debate. Because I don't think he's prepared, and I think you're absolutely right.
We have a president that can't be bothered to show up to work to handle one of the worst natural disasters in American history, much less show up to be debated on his ideas.
Yeah.
So I
mean, if he is the nominee and the Democrats keep him, they will. I think you're absolutely right. He'll do a basement campaign. They'll keep him as minimum as possible on the campaign trail. And
worked last time. He didn't show up for anything.
Yeah.
We got to figure out a way to get me this fired up at the front end of the podcast instead of at the back end. I feel like the last few episodes we really finished strong.
We like to reward the listeners for hanging in there.
That's right. The stats show that they're not sticking around with us, though, gentlemen. Well, I think we're going to have a lot to say about all of this on the next episode. Whether it's I'll probably be watching the debate because I figure I can probably get the Tucker interview later on or see the highlights on Twitter or wherever your venue is. But
I'm excited to. I'm hoping the Tucker interview will be accessible, but I'm also excited to see how Vivek does in the debate because I think he's bringing some good ideas forward, and so I think that will be interesting.
I almost wonder if the knives will somewhat be out for Vivek. Because I think he's starting to capture some real conservative energy.
Yeah, I think you're right
on that. And I think some will want to try and knock him down. It'll be interesting to see who's kind of sniping at one another in this debate. Yeah. Because the battle for second place and third place is absolutely real. Mm-hmm. So, very good. Anything else, gentlemen?
No.
Okay, good. Well, listeners, tune in. We got some really good feedback off of the last episode. And we're making some improvements, some added distribution channels. We'll make some announcements on that. But we're trying to make sure we get this out to as many folks as we can. So with that in mind, my usual request is like and subscribe and share and tell your friends. And with all of that said, we will see you next time on ITR Live.